Okay, everyone, welcome to our monthly COSAC meeting for July 7th. We appreciate you being here. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda and the minutes? I didn't see anything. Did you guys see anything? Okay. Without objection, then we'll adopt and approve the agenda for today's meeting and the minutes from our April 7th meeting. Brandon, yeah, assuming there's no changes to our agenda.
No.
Okay, so are we gonna hear from Gabe first then? Yep.
Sure.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, any questions or comments from committee members? We'll just roll right in with Gabe's presentation, if that's all right.
More of just an update than a presentation.
Thanks.
And hopefully an opportunity.
Sure.
Hopefully an opportunity for you guys to ask some questions and also see us, because you haven't seen us in a while. So where are we at today? So, you know, last July we had met, I believe, with COSAC, and then we met with Cache County to kind of go over and move through our phase 2 open space bond application. The county awarded $1.25 million through their resolution in support of that project. From there, you know, I think what the county wanted to see was matching funding brought in from the Lee Ray McAllister Working Farm and Ranch Fund. And so we went ahead and pursued funding from Lee Ray. We were successful in getting about $250,000 from the Lee Ray McAllister Working Farm and Ranch Fund in October. Within the county's commitment and the state's commitment, we were able to pursue federal funding. And that got a little more challenging given all the changes that have occurred over the last few months. But we were able to move forward and put together an application for NRCS. That application then went through a state level review and then a federal level review before being approved. So that application has been approved and it's been approved for funding. And so now we have a federal commitment on the project. To date, that federal commitment has stayed there. It has not been pulled back and that funding has not been rescinded. So that funding is committed to the project. During this time, we've also been working through various due diligence items. So we have begun pulling title reports. We have begun working through some of the environmental due diligence, hazardous material surveys, et cetera, on the property. We're also at the point now where we've begun kind of working through the conservation easement deed with the landowner. So we have an initial draft of that deed. As we've drafted it, we've worked to consider the county's requirements and the objectives of the Cache County Open Space Bond and ensure that the provisions are meeting kind of your objectives. We also have several other partners in this transaction though. So we're also trying to meet NRCS's requirements as well as Bear River Land Conservancy's requirements, the Utah Department of Ag and Food, the Lee Ray McAllister Fund, their requirements, and the landowner. So it is a very much a multi-party contract in some senses. And so we've been kind of drafting it to try to meet all those different requirements and to try to work with the landowner through those different requirements so that they have a firm understanding of what the deed is restricting and what it is not restricting. That's been kind of an ongoing process for the last couple months. I'm hoping to be moving that process to a close, at least with the landowner. And then I'm going to be opening that up, you know, for Cache County's review with their legal counsel to begin going through those provisions to make sure that the way we've drafted it is going to meet all the requirements of the open space bond, as well as UDAF, Lee Ray McAllister, will require that review and our legal counsel. So there's still a fair bit of review then on that easement document. But once we kind of are able to kind of work through those different reviews and have all the parties agree and kind of come to terms, we can then submit that deed to NRCS. Once that is approved, we can then begin pushing towards an appraisal. And so in the meantime, as I said, we've begun working on other due diligence items, digging into the minerals, looking at getting a survey on the property. And so those are kind of the next steps that we're going to kind of run concurrently with working to finalize this deed. So in general, that is what we've been up to. I know it's been a while since you've seen or heard from us, but that's kind of where we're at today.
Good. Quick questions on Elkhorn Ranch?
I imagine the county has weighed in on that document a little bit.
Yeah, will be, yep.
Will be, so.
Yep. So that'll be a next step.
I could add, if you'd like, we actually had a meeting last week to start thinking about what we would want today, because this will be the first time we've done this, so we don't have a template for what we've agreed to in the past. So we're doing some due diligence on our side and looking at what our requirements are, what we would want to require, and we're looking forward to sitting down and meeting and negotiating an agreement.
So the feds will have already looked at something, but then if the county comes up with something, it'll have to go back to the feds, or how will that work?
Yeah, so that's something we're trying to avoid, right? We don't really want to play the pass the document game.
Right.
We want to do that as little as possible. So where we have drafted other deeds that have met NRCS's requirements, that's kind of what gives us our base template, and the same with UDAF. So we've closed other conservation easements that have had both of them as a partner. So that kind of helps inform what we have to have in the deed to meet their requirements. And so that's kind of what we've been using to draft, as well as kind of what the landowner is looking to see. And then in general, we've worked to draft the provisions so that they meet your objectives as well. Now, I understand that those objectives, may shift a little bit after an attorney reviews it. But in general, right, the things that you're looking to preserve: open space, protect waterways, protect wildlife habitat, be visible from the highway, right? We've drafted those provisions into that deed to ensure that there are restrictions that allow for those benefits that the project was awarded for to continue into the future.
Is the NRCS commitment financially, is it the original budget amount?
Is it, as was proposed?
Yeah,
Yes,
as-
nearly. It's nearly 2 million.
Yeah.
It's just under 2 million. So they're contributing nearly 48% of the total project cost.
So the county share doesn't have to change then, is that right?
Not currently.
Okay.
No. Now, once we do go into appraisal, right, that appraisal could come higher or lower than estimated, which could potentially change the commitment. And there is some renegotiation, if you will, at that point in time. But yeah, not currently.
Questions, Kendra, at all?
No, I think it covers everything.
Okay. What else did you want to talk about, Gabe?
I think, this is our major project with you guys as we kind of move forward and are able to kind of move this project forward, complete the due diligence, continue to move forward on it. We do hope to bring a future project, but I will note that future federal funding is, as you may well know, very uncertain at this time.
Do you know anything about this bill in terms of what they've slated? What's your picture you have on alternative funding sources at this point?
At this point, we still have the Lee Ray McAllister Fund. They have, they still have $1 million ongoing. They've opened that up now to 2 application periods. So you now have an application period in I believe in August, and then again in the spring. So they've kind of split their $1 million in half and are offering 2 application periods. There is still funding available in the ASAP ALE program as far as I'm aware, but I do think it will be reduced. So I just think that the amount of funding that the state will receive for the various federal matching programs from NRCS will be reduced. And then the reduction in staffing will slow things down as well. So that has been one of our challenges over the last couple of months with this project, is that the reduction in staffing has slowed reviews, process, different things on their end.
Other questions? What, so, I mean, if we touch on capacity, right? And I think that's part of what you're describing too, right? Bear River, is not necessarily gonna be able to manage half a dozen concurrent projects.
Right.
That involve county funding or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
So, and we also know that for nonprofit organizations, for the state, for other potential funding sources, you know, the smaller projects aren't gonna receive that much attention as, you know, hundreds of acres, that sort of thing, right?
Depending on the,
general, I mean,
yeah,
I'm saying
in general, yeah, in general, I mean, it really comes down to the conservation values are what make a project competitive. And sometimes larger projects have greater conservation value. So that is kind of the driving factor though, when it comes to being competitive for state or federal programs, is just what are those conservation values?
Yeah, and so, you know, as a committee, we see projects, landowners who are interested come in and they have 20 acres or something like that. You know, if we could think of the Cooper project,
Yeah.
you know, on the highway as a good example, right?
Yeah,
I think everybody would agree, we would love to conserve
yeah,
property. It's probably not going to garner attention from NRCS at only 20 acres, for example.
yeah, less likely,
Yeah.
if I'm giving my, professional opinion, sure.
I mean, that's what I see. And,
Yeah.
And so please,
Yeah,
you know, if you see something different, say otherwise. But I think, I'm just making the point that we do see smaller projects, and they may not even gain a lot of interest from us other than local interest, right? The small projects. And we have to weigh if they're contributing to, you know, what we understand the voters were interested in conserving, those kinds of things. But there could be small projects that don't garner much attention other than from our committee.
yes, yeah,
Or the county, for that matter. And I think that's one of the questions we have for the council and for the executives to consider is what, that I've heard from other committee members, how do we pursue projects that aren't coming through to us like Elkhorn Ranch, for example? So just something to consider going forward that I think a lot of us have had questions about.
Yeah, I did send a email to Sandy Goodlander requesting the workshop that we talked about where we could present a way to offer those people without necessarily going. But I have not, that was on 2 weeks ago I sent that and I have not heard back.
I know staff's been working on getting that scheduled. I think it's next month is what
2
we're,
weeks from tomorrow
okay.
is when they're planning on it.
Oh, they are planning on it?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't get anything
I
back.
met with Sandy this morning and I asked her about it and she said they were planning on 22nd. I don't know the time, they usually have workshops at
Right before.
3:30, 4, depending on how much time we can. And sometimes they put it into the normal, but I would anticipate it would be beforehand, sometime between 3 and 5.
Okay, great, that's good news.
So that's forthcoming. Yeah, any other questions for Gabe or?
I have a couple.
yeah,
So, once you have an easement agreement in place and you're the holder of the easement.
yeah,
What is that, I mean, I would guess that 99 times out of 100, what that generally entails is that it just sits there and it's a recorded document that establishes your interest in the goals and parameters of use for the property. What are the exceptions to that and what's that look like? What's the average course after an easement's in place if something happens or whatnot?
yeah. So That's a great question. So easements aren't ever really finished in some senses, right? So we'll record the document, we'll all agree to it. You know, sometimes funding will transfer hands, sometimes it won't, sometimes it'll be an entirely donated conservation easement. But after that point, we kind of, as the holder of that conservation easement, have the responsibility to monitor and enforce it into the future. And so every year, we will be meeting with that landowner. We'll be having a conversation about what their intentions are for the property that year, what they have been, you know, doing in terms of whether it's an agricultural property or a forest property, whether it's a property that allows for public access, right? We'll be talking to them about that. And then we'll be monitoring that property to ensure that those terms and conditions that are in that conservation easement deed and those conservation values that those provisions protect are upheld. So it's an annual monitoring on our behalf. We also carry insurance on the properties that we hold. And so that insurance is a legal insurance that will help us enforce the terms if there is a violation. We have policies and procedures for how to handle violations. So yeah, but what it looks like is an ongoing relationship with the landowner in which we monitor annually.
Are any of those policies or terms spelled out in the easement agreements? Or are they, it's just negotiation about, you know, how to enforce it?
So there are enforcement clauses in the conservation easement deed, yeah.
And then
And it's also spelled out like, you know, deeds have kind of different levels, right? There are things that are prohibited, there are things that are limited, and there are things that are allowed. And those are all spelled out in the conservation easement deed. Limited, for example, may be an item in which they're allowed to do something with the property, on their property, but it requires our approval as being a holder. And so in the easement deed itself, there are, you know, paragraphs that basically go in and explain this is how you would get permission to use this limited use on the property.
And then, I guess, follow-up, are there conditions under which, like, an easement agreement is ever amended and there's an adjustment to that? And what are the conditions under which that's likely to happen? For instance, I would think that's less likely to happen when there's federal funding involved, but maybe I'm wrong. You know, if maybe one of the parties feels like something was overlooked or not properly reflected in the recorded agreement, do you start entirely over, or? You know?
Yeah, I mean, there is an amendment clause in the conservation easement deed that kind of spells out the amendment process. I will say that, as you mentioned, because there are now multiple parties on this easement, it's very unlikely that future amendments will occur. But that is part of the reason that it takes us so long to negotiate the deed, is that we are trying to think into the future the very best that we can with a crystal ball and with the landowner to ensure that we're going to minimize things like that occurring. Yeah. And that's the reason it's not just a signature on a page, right? So I've been, you know, talking with the landowner, and we've had a lot of meetings over the last 2 or 3 months, really going through every detail in the deed, really what the restriction is, what the limited use is, what it means for them, to the best of our ability. Go ahead, Matt.
To touch on that, so I'm Matt Coombs, I'm the Conservation Director of the Bourbon Land Conservancy and Safe Land Trust. So yeah, we have language in there for indemnification, defense, access, for monitoring and that sort of thing, also amendment. Amendments are difficult, and it is because those different parties, so like in this case with the Elkhorn Ranch, so Department of Ag and Food is expected to be a co-holder, right? So they'd be seeking approval from both
took an IRS benefit and they're changing it,
Yeah,
then
right.
it's like, wait,
Yeah, like you can't just, do an easement and then come back 2 or 3 years later and it's like, oh, well, I wanna do this. Sorry, I forgot about that, and then totally change something that would affect that valuation of the easement, right? And the tax benefits or the program funding or that sort of thing.
Any other questions, comments? Elkhorn Ranch or otherwise? Okay, thanks, Gabe.
Okay, thank you.
Did you say that you may have something else that you're bringing our way?
Yeah, I mean, if we can, continue to move these projects forward, I think we have had a lot of interest from other landowners. We have been reached out to about other projects, and so I do think there's interest out there. It's just a matter of lining up kind of all the pieces.
And these are potential applicants that haven't applied yet, right?
Yeah, yep. So, yeah, we've been contacted by a few folks that have not applied yet, with properties that they would be interested in pursuing. But again, we want to make sure that we can line up all the different funding sources. And so that's kind of where we're at.
Okay, great. Appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, next on our agenda is to get an update from David on the council's acquisitions of properties that we've read about in the paper and the press releases, that sort of thing. So I know folks have asked me questions and I don't have answers, so
Okay.
David's here to help with all of that, so.
Thanks for inviting me, and I just wanted to start by thanking all of you for your service. This is a really important effort that is happening here in our county, and I'm glad that all of you are helping us with it. It was nice to hear the update on Elkhorn Ranch, because when I think back to when we were first trying to get this on the ballot, there were two projects in my mind that I really wanted to preserve, and one was Elkhorn Ranch, and the other was Sherwood Hills. And at the time that we were discussing the bond on the ballot and telling voters about it, I was actually using Sherwood Hills as an example of what could have been. Yeah, because at the time, a developer had purchased it and proposed a large development there. And I shared with voters, if only we had approved this when it was on the ballot last time, maybe we could have prevented that. Maybe we could have saved that beautiful open space there in the canyon. But nevertheless, we continued having discussions starting back around that time of the ballot initiative with the developer who purchased that land near Sherwood Hills. And as you've seen, as you've seen and heard, we were finally able to negotiate a purchase of that land. It ended up being almost 800 acres. If you look at those numbers, the top number is how much the county acquired, 470 acres. That bottom number, 300 acres, was also acquired from the developer by a private individual. That was Mark Thompson, who purchased that piece. And that ended up with a total of almost 800 acres that's being preserved that could have potentially resulted in maybe 400 houses there. The zoning, this land is all within Wellsville City, and the zoning in that area allows for 2 houses per acre. So, or no, 2 acres, 1 house per 2 acres. And we really didn't want that. And so we had an effort that went on for a couple of years trying to figure out a way to preserve this land. And it's a lot of money that we spent on this, $7.5 million that we spent. And if you look at the cost per acre, though, that comes out to about $16,000 per acre, which is pretty cheap. If you were going to buy land in Cache Valley, $16,000 per acre is a really good deal, especially if it's something that's been entitled and could be developed. So we felt like even though this was a lot of money, that it was worth it, and it ultimately was a good deal. Let's go to the next one. And this is what made it a better deal, is we tried to approach it from the perspective that I know we want to use all of our bond dollars, and that's to leverage our dollars with other dollars and make it so that our money isn't the only money involved. And in this case, we were able to do that. Wellsville City contributed $1 million. We got a $2 million grant from the Utah Division of Outdoor Recreation, and Mark Thompson actually donated $500,000 of his own money to this purchase. And that's not for his 300 acres, that was for the county's acres. So that ended up so that we only had to spend about $4 million of our bond money toward this purchase. So if you look at that, then now it's down less than 10,000 per acre if you count how much of the bond money we spent toward that purchase. So obviously the reason why we wanted to preserve this land is because of its scenic beauty, the fact that it is the most popular, most beautiful gateway to the county, and it has significant wildlife value as well. It's a migratory area. Wildlife migrates through this area. If you'll go to the next slide. So what we're going to do going forward with it, we don't know yet, but we just got a grant from the Outdoor Recreation Program again to do a study. So we were successful. Thank you to our trail staff who are here. They're really good at getting grants. They have gotten so many grants over the last couple of years. And really, I just talked to them about this when we did this purchase, which was, what was the date on this? April, end of April. That's when I talked to them about, hey, do you think we could get a grant? They already got the grant. So, so we have this money now to do a study and to figure out what we could do, what we should do, what we want to do in that area, because it's a lot of space. If you go back 2 slides. So what I'm talking about is the 470 acres that the county owns. The 300 acres that is privately owned, Mark Thompson bought that. We're not doing a plan for that. My understanding is his plan is to use it for agricultural use, and I believe he plans to put a conservation easement on the land. There is no conservation easement on either side yet, so we own ours outright, the 470 acres on the county side, and
that includes the Wellsville City?
Yeah, actually, go forward like 3 slides, right there, okay. So if you look at this one.
By the way, good job cleaning up those crazy property boundaries. Those were the craziest property boundaries I've ever seen before. But when I get on the plat map,
Yeah.
It looks a lot better.
Yeah, yeah, we've had some staff cleaning that up. So, so Wellsville helped us purchase this. It's in their city, and they own some land around this. Actually, maybe, do you have the parcel viewer handy? Could you pull that up?
Pull it up, but it'll take a minute.
Okay, so these purple spots are the areas that we do not own. So this is the Bala family. That's where that cell tower is, up on top there, this piece. Wellsville owns this, I believe, all of this. UDOT owns this. This is 18 acres right here. We're in the purchase of acquiring that from UDOT. So that should be added, this 18-acre piece should be added to what we own. That was, they used it as a gravel pit. Yeah, for the highway. So my understanding is they're planning to give it to us. So I don't have the deed in hand yet, but that's what we've been talking about. So that should be coming to us. And then this is the Sherwood Hills Resort right here. That's still privately owned by them. It still has buildings on it, and they're still planning some kind of business operations up there. So they still own that. And then this, and this were retained by the developer. And his plan is to still develop some lots there. This was part of the negotiation, but as part of the negotiation, we've negotiated that down to, it will probably be less than 24 lots that actually end up going in there. As part of the negotiation, Mark Thompson was entitled to some of those lots, but my understanding is that his plan is to keep those open as well. So they will be going through the subdivision process with Wellsville City now to subdivide lots in these areas and this. There will be a couple over here. And then they are planning on building an indoor equestrian arena for this development in this area here. Wellsville City has some springs in this area. I think it's right there, actually. So one of their concerns, they had several concerns related to this development, but one of their concerns was preserving the integrity of their spring because it's a drinking water spring. And the intent is to protect maybe some more area around the spring and make sure it stays safe from contamination. And we are also in discussions right now with Wellsville City, since they contributed to part of the purchase of this land. We are in discussions with them about some type of a joint ownership agreement where we would jointly own and manage this property. And that's not just because they helped purchase it, but it's also in their city, and their spring is there, and hopefully they can help manage it as well. As a county, we don't really have any parks. We don't really do that. So we do help people to build parks. Most of the parks in the valley actually were funded by the county through our RAPS tax contributions, at least partially funded. So we're in the business of helping to get parks established, but we're not really in the business of managing parks. So that would be ideal if they could help us with that, but that's something that we're discussing. So what was the question about Wellsville? What they own, or?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So really, they didn't take.
Yeah, do you want to switch?
They didn't take ownership in a separate way. Like, they didn't take a parcel of this and we took a parcel. It was jointly.
Correct. Well, at the moment, we own all of it. They don't own any of it. They own the stuff they owned before adjacent to it, but we own all of it, and we just did that for simplicity. It was easier for the.
Protected their watershed.
Yeah, it was easier for the property transaction for there to just be one purchaser. We went ahead and purchased it, and actually they still owe us that $1 million. They haven't, and the $2 million from the state, because they were actually the grantee of the $2 million from the state. So they'll be contributing to us $3 million, and that's all part of our agreement. We're negotiating that agreement, and as part of that agreement, we'll give them ownership. They'll give us $3 million. So. And Casey Snyder was instrumental in helping us to get that $2 million grant from the state as well. Yeah, if you'll just go to that area where the spring is, and just north, go up.
These property lines are so much better. That was.
Yeah, so.
Fairway was like a property line.
Yeah, you'll see that go north a little bit more where it says Wellsville City. So Wellsville already owns that piece there, right there, yeah. And that's where they have a spring. And I'm not sure if it's more than one spring or if it's just one collection box from a couple springs, but that's the area that they're really concerned about, and they want to make sure it's protected, and we're willing to do that. What exactly we do on this land and when we do that, like I said, that's to be determined. We have some money to do a study, to talk about some ideas, but how we would fund that even, whatever we come up with, it's probably many years down the road before anything happens here. In the meantime, we're preserving it from development, and we're going to, we've already got our vegetation management crew out there dealing with some of the weeds. There's a lot of Dyer's woad out there and some other things, so they're dealing with those things. But it's a beautiful space. If any of you want to go out and check it out, be careful, because we've already seen 2 rattlesnakes out there. So I think There's a reason why that's called Rattlesnake Canyon. But you're welcome to go check it out if you want to. There is a gate. The gate to get into Sherwood Hills is still there, but usually it's unlocked and you can open it and go through.
Dave, on
Yeah,
the road in that's been there forever, I understand the county will have access? to
yeah,
that road?
yeah. So that's our plan, is to have access from that same entrance. So if you go back down south to the road, so where that gate is, our plan is probably somewhere around right there to have a road that branches off from that main access road to access our property. So that's to be determined, all part of the study and planning and what we're going to do there. We do own land to the south as well, so we may, if we ever develop something to the south, we might want a road branching off to the south. There's kind of a little branch for the former golf course that goes both directions around that area. And then we've also been in contact with the property owners around it and talked to them about being good neighbors. So us being good neighbors to them, because they were concerned about what was going to happen with the change in ownership. Our goal with the areas that were identified to be developed, our goal was to make them not visible from the highway. So they were pushed back away from the highway. You can see there where that south one is pretty far back, almost to the back property line. So that's the hope, is that the developed areas are not very visible and that we can preserve the scenic vistas through there, which is a goal of our open space program. I think that was all. If you go back to the slides, I think that was all the slides I had for this purchase. Are there any other questions about this one?
Dave, would you expect the homes that are there, 24 rather than 400, that they'd be larger and more spread out? And
Yeah, I believe he's planning to propose 3-acre lots for his subdivision, and I think he's planning to sell them for $500,000 a lot. So if it's $500,000 for the lot, it's probably going to be a nice house that gets built on it. So yeah, these are going to be estate lots, nice big houses. I would anticipate it's going to be a high quality development.
For the old hotel and that's separate ownership altogether.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So that is still owned by the people who owned it before, and they have a shared access on that access road as well. We did work out some other things like the access and utility access and things like that. The development, when it goes in, will actually have a wastewater treatment facility across the highway on Mark Thompson's land. So kind of in that top right corner there, right there, right there. And that area, I believe, is where they're going to put a wastewater treatment plant.
So there'll be buildings there.
Mm-hmm. Well, something. I don't know if there'll be a building. It's basically a leach field, so it'll be underground.
The drain field.
The drain field. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure what, if anything, will be above ground, but that's the plan, is that will be built there. Because of the size of the development, they don't have to connect to the city sewer. They can do a small on-site treatment facility.
As far as trails in this area, as we look at that, is there a good assessment somewhere of the trail system that was in there before this all closed up?
Do you mean the trail system related to the golf course?
No, there was a trail system that was built by some people out in Wellsville and others. We'd write it. There was some at least 1 or 2 high school races out there. And I'm just thinking if someone does a study and they're not aware of that,
Yeah.
it would be a little sad that there's no legacy.
Do you know where?
It was up above in the trees, kind of above the resort there.
Okay.
I know some people out in Wellsville know a lot more about
Where
it.
that water tank is, in that area?
Yeah, but it went to the north and to the south as well. I mean, it
Okay.
was-
So is that, get into Forest Service land?
some of it was some of it was a double track, and some of it was a single track.
Okay. That's good to know. I was not aware of that, but our trail staff is here now, and now they're aware.
Several people brought up to me who it was that built it, and they were Wellsville guys, and I believe the guys are still alive. They're like out there, so like I said, it'd be really sad not to take some of that legacy knowledge and
Yeah,
incorporate it.
that's great to know. Thank you for sharing that. I would anticipate that we would have a nice trail system on this land at some point, including wintertime trails. This would be a great place for that.
I mean, with that, obviously, there's great recreational potential here, then there's gonna be the need for the infrastructure to support that. I'm assuming there aren't any restrictions on the county for where you can do what, or that sort of thing?
That's something we'll have to work through with Wellsville City on zoning and what's
Right.
allowed.
But I mean, with the developer, that sort of thing.
Oh, no, there was nothing about you can't have motorized or you can't be here these hours. There was nothing like that established. But we do want to be good neighbors to whoever ends up living there. And we'll want to keep that in consideration when we decide what to do here.
Isn't the hotel property, is that still for sale?
I don't know.
Been for sale from time to time
I
and off the market?
last I heard it wasn't, but I don't know what they're currently doing. They were running a treatment facility there, and then they actually closed down after a couple years ago when we had that really big snow. It collapsed a couple of their rooftops, and I'm not sure if they've opened since then, but I believe, last I heard was that they intended to, but that might not be correct.
I talked to the guy that had for sale, and unfortunately, when you have a building, things are much more expensive
Yeah.
than when there's no building.
Yeah,
But, I mean, he was definitely interested in, some sort of recreational value and was interested in the county. The money was, the numbers were so big, I didn't bring it up to anyone.
yeah,
County-wise, but.
yeah.
The county would have an interest in that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's ready-made access, potential parking and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. It's a nice facility.
I think
Yeah.
it's $11 million though.
Yeah, yeah, that's a lot. It is a nice facility. It's a resort, and I went and toured it a couple of years ago, and they had done a lot to fix it up. So I'm sure there's value there. So are there any other questions about that one? If not, I'll move on to the next purchase. So this other purchase was what we're referring to as the Chambers Farm, and it totals 557 acres, and it's directly east of Smithfield. And we were able to purchase this for less than 1.9 million for 557 acres, which came out to about 3,400 per acre. And we felt like that was a pretty good deal because you saw the cost on the other one, but there is a difference. The difference is that other one was very developable and zoned for development and pending development. This one wasn't. Some parts of this one are developable, but other parts are not. It's pretty mountainous in some spots, so that's why there is a difference in cost. If you go to the next slide. I'll just use the mouse. So this area outlined in red is what we purchased. This is our 557 acres. And as you can see here, this is Smithfield Dry Canyon, and this is Birch Canyon. So the property spans from Smithfield Dry to Birch Canyon, which is pretty nice because then we can connect from canyon to canyon. This land here is actually already owned by a sportsman's group and preserved as open space. So that's nice to have it adjacent to that. And then to the east of this property is Forest Service. As I mentioned, some of it is developable. This portion down here is pretty flat, and this area was farmed. The top areas, this area up here was farmed as well, and is a little, it's the flattest part up in the hills is right here. There's a road that goes up this canyon and comes around this way, and you can't really see it in this, but I drove up it the other day. So you can drive all the way up, and then you can drive out to the front of the mountain here. There is water on this. This is a view from up on top, looking down over Smithfield, and that's just a slightly different angle, looking a little bit farther north. There is Gunsight Peak out in the distance. And then this is the main reason we bought it, really, is because the goal is to put the Bonneville Shoreline Trail through this land. And this land was listed for sale, and there was someone else trying to purchase it. And we actually had to bid against them for the purchase, and thankfully we ended up with a higher bid. But there was a question about whether or not the Bonneville Shoreline Trail would be able to be constructed if the other party had been able to purchase it, which would have resulted in the trail having to go down basically through the neighborhoods to connect. So that one that says, I don't know why it's listed, Landis, you have it saying alternate route here. That's actually the preferred route, isn't it?
Yeah, before the purchase was made, this
Okay.
route was the question mark. Well, they both were question marks, but this we thought was the bigger question mark. But now after the purchase, that pretty much opens up this route's going to be pretty straightforward at this point.
So
It was an original study. It was the alternative route in case the other one. We would try the other one first, but that didn't come through. Then we moved this one. So we thought this would be tougher, but now this is the preferred route.
So this area is all planning to be developed, as is this area over here. We have the potential to negotiate, because the property owner that owns the land over here, it's my understanding that they need an easement for a water line through our property. I would like to negotiate in exchange for that to have access to own all the trails that actually already exist on their property up in this area. There are some trails up here, these red lines essentially, and up into here. So that's one of the other reasons why we wanted to secure the property, so that we could be able to secure not just the trail across our property here, but also over in these areas, to be able to bring the Bonneville Shoreline Trail and to preserve the other existing trail systems that are in that area that people use. Some of them are access roads for irrigation in the area. I was starting to say there's water down on this section. There is a canal that flows along this way. It comes from up in here, comes out and flows down this way and empties into a pond around, it might be that dark spot right there. There's a pond here. So there is natural water that flows across this property in the spring and early summer. And it's really pretty down here, really green and lush. And this is an area that was had the potential for development down here. What we're going to do with this one, we haven't gotten a grant yet to study this one, but we do need to come up with a plan for this one. I have had an initial conversation with the mayor of Smithfield about the land. Mentioned to her that we bought it, and that we'd like to have some additional conversations with them about a potential partnership with them to maybe build something or do something on the land with them, and maybe it's some kind of park space or recreation space down below and up above that ideally they would help us to manage. I think there's also, I haven't talked to them yet, but the sportsman group that owns the land to the south of ours. I think there's a potential for some kind of partnership with them too, as far as land management goes.
So on that, on the chambers, the 1.9 million, that was all bond funding, right?
Yeah, that is all bond funding. Well, actually, it's not, because we spent all the bond money on the initial purchase. So we actually loaned ourselves the money to do this, and then we will decide what we're going to use to pay ourselves back.
Okay.
And our initial bond that was issued was approximately $6 million, just less than $6 million.
Yeah.
And so we used all of that cash on hand to purchase the Wellsville money. We will get $3 million of that reimbursed. Well, we got $500,000 reimbursed already from Mark, and we'll get another $3 million reimbursed of that money, and then we could use that money to reimburse ourselves for this one. But our plan going forward is we have about $14 million that we can still bond for. And we also have a new source of open space dollars that is going to be available to us going forward. And that's a result of Representative Casey Snyder and Senator Scott Sandel ran a bill, HB 237, in this year's legislative session. That was a Greenbelt rollback tax amendment. And what it does is it makes it so that any Greenbelt rollback taxes that are paid all come to the county and get put into an open space fund. Historically, the way that it was done is Greenbelt rollback taxes were paid and then distributed as they would have been distributed in the first place if they had continued to own the land. The money would have been distributed to the school district, the mosquito abatement district, to the city if it's in a city. Whichever taxing entity had a percentage of the tax levy on that property, they would have each gotten a piece of that Greenbelt rollback money. The bill that was passed this year says that all of that money just goes to open space preservation, which I think is a great concept, because the way that the Greenbelt exemption works is if a parcel of land is in agricultural production, they get a tax exemption to incentivize it staying open and staying in agricultural production. But when that goes away, there's a 5-year look-back period, and they have to pay what they would have paid if it didn't have the exemption for those 5 years. So the theory is that money should be used then to create some other open space, because that open space that was in the exemption is likely going away. If the Greenbelt exemption is going away, it's probably because it's being developed. And it could just be that they're no longer having an agricultural operation there, but most likely it's because it's being developed now. So the intent of the legislature, I believe, was to balance out that loss of open space that was previously in that Greenbelt, and to provide something to replace it. So they're giving us those dollars as a county, those dollars, to be able to secure open space. And we did a look back ourselves over the last 5 years, and the average amount that we collected in Greenbelt was about $900,000 a year. So that's not a fixed number. It can vary from year to year depending on who sells their land or who takes their land out of Greenbelt. But if you look at the last 5 years as an average, that means in the next 20 years, it could be close to $20 million in additional open space preservation funds that could be coming our way. So although we have another $14 million available through our bond, we also are likely to have many millions more from this HB 237 funding. So that's a good thing. However, It makes all of our jobs even more difficult because now we need to find even more land. That's a good problem to have. I'm glad to have that problem. I want to preserve more land, but I think this could result in us being able to preserve twice as much land as we would have been able to otherwise. So I'm excited about that. I'm thankful for that, and we need to find more land to preserve. That was everything I had in my presentation.
Dave, on this one then, the 1.9 million will ultimately go against the $20 million bond?
Not necessarily. We haven't decided that yet. That's to be determined, but not necessarily. We could use some of those other Greenbelt dollars toward that, because right now we just used our general fund cash on hand to purchase it,
Okay.
to be reimbursed later, and we still need to determine what we're going to reimburse it with. If we're going to reimburse it with bond dollars, or if we're going to reimburse it with those other rollback dollars.
What are your thoughts going forward? The Elkhorn project was an easement in which the owner retains property rights, and you have to work out all the details of the easement, enforcement and all that. These were outright purchase.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I've always thought maybe outright purchase preserves the taxpayer's value and is a more simple arrangement. You could always lease it back for farming.
Yeah.
What are the county's thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I can share what my thoughts are about it. There are pros and cons to each one. With these two that I've just shared with you, we own them outright. Fee title, we own them 100%. We can do whatever we want with them at the moment. Our plan is to preserve them. However, there are drawbacks to that because now we're also responsible for maintaining it. That is an advantage to the arrangement like we're talking about with Elkhorn Ranch, because we don't have to do anything with that. He's responsible for it, and he can farm it, and he can hand it down to his kids, and he could even sell it. It just has to stay open, but we don't have to do anything with any of that. But with that, there are also limitations because we don't get to decide what else happens with it, or if a trail gets built across it, or if there's public access to it. So there are trade-offs on both sides. I put in both of these what the cost per acre was because I would like us to consider that when we look at future projects. What is the value we're getting in an easement? Because like in the case of this Chambers Farm, we paid $3,400 per acre, and we own it 100%, and we have access to build a trail across it, do whatever we want with it. We can put a park on it, we can build campgrounds on it, whatever, a concert venue, whatever we want. We can do whatever we want on it. I don't know what the cost per acre is going to be on the 1.25 million for how many acres? Somebody could run
About 115.
115 acres. So, and we don't own that. All we're buying is the development rights to that. And in fact, with that one, he's saying we can't have any public access to it. There can't be a trail across it. Yeah, what does that come out to? 10,000 an acre. Okay, so we're paying 10,000 an acre just for an easement in that one.
Is highly developable.
Yeah, it's very developable. It's right in the center of town. So the value of that land versus the Smithfield land, Elkhorn Ranch is way more valuable. It also has historic value. That is the oldest farm, the oldest ranch in the valley, the first one established by the Mormon settlers when they came in here. And it's right in the middle of Nibley and Millville and Providence and Logan, and it's on the Blacksmith Fork River, and it has other value to it. So I'm not saying it's not worth 10,000 an acre to buy only an easement, but it is something that I want us to consider as we spend our dollars. And I want you to know that that's something that the council and I considered when we purchased this land, was what are the types of value that we might be able to get out of this, and how much is that going to cost us, and how much is it going to cost us per acre? Because we do want to stretch our dollar as much as possible. This project was a very fast turnaround. The Sherwood Hills project I mentioned to you, we worked on that for years. And it was in the background, and we weren't sure if it was ever going to turn into anything, but because of how long it took and how difficult it was, it kind of forced us to pull in other dollars. This one was very quick. It was on the market. When we found out about it, there was already an offer on it, and we had to move very quickly, which meant we didn't have time to leverage any other dollars or pursue any other grant funds. However, I'm hoping we can now use it as matching funds for future grants that we request. But my opinion is I like owning it, but there is extra cost for that for us to own it. And that's why we're looking at potential partnerships with people who can help us manage them. If we can do that, I think that's the best of both worlds, actually. However, it also depends what kind of land we're talking about, because if it's an active working farm, then it would be great if it stayed as an active working farm. I want it to stay in agricultural production, and we're not going to farm it. We don't want to do that. This one that we purchased, the Smithfield Chambers Farm, they called it that, but they haven't farmed it in many, many years, is what I was told. So those are some of my thoughts. Eric, did you have a question too?
Well, I mean, and if they haven't been farming it, it doesn't necessarily work, but one thing, like if you picked it up so that something could be done with it, you could take all the easements and do whatever you want and then sell it with with a conservation easement. For, like if it was in-farm something or
Yeah.
someone could run cattle on it.
Yeah.
You take everything you want, we have our trail access, you have the other and sell it for $1 million or something like
Yeah.
that.
We did briefly discuss that as well, especially that piece down on the bottom. This piece right here is very flat and usable, and it has water. And if we wanted to do what we needed to do with that and then turn around and sell it, we could probably get back all or most of our money that we spent on the whole parcel. I guess that's to be determined. We don't have a plan for it right now. But there is, I believe, Hyde Park City needs to purchase an easement from us to go through that land as well. So we're likely going to get some of the money back from that also.
How long is the trail along there?
Do you know how long that segment is? I guess if you go into the
To the viewer.
viewer, you can measure it.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
A mile or?
I'd say probably the section at the bottom is probably about a half mile, would be my
Okay.
guess. And then almost a mile with the other connections with the road that we have planned.
David, I think,
The trail.
you know,
What's that?
I'm sure one of the things you all have talked about as well, I think the public will be interested in knowing is, you know, if the county is using open space bond funds, you know, to acquire these properties, I think there's an expectation maybe, if not a
Requirement?
requirement to have an easement on it, you know, or some sort of restrictions, right?
Yeah.
As you said, we could do, you own it. You
Yeah.
can do whatever you want with it
Yeah.
now, right?
Yeah, we could turn around and sell it to a developer.
As long as it's
Yeah.
not using open space.
Yeah.
You know, for that.
Yeah, so even though we could, my point is that we have flexibility to determine its use, but our intent is to have it be an open space, especially considering that that's the money we're using to purchase it. So, yeah, I can tell you that's the intent of the council, is for this to stay open, for both of them to stay open. That's the reason we bought them. That's what we want to do. And even though we could do whatever we want with it, potentially, I don't know, maybe we could say we bought it all with, because technically we did buy at least this one with general fund dollars and just not reimburse those other dollars. We could do that, but that's not why we bought it. The reason we bought both of these was because we wanted to preserve them.
And I think the only way to do that is to put an easement on it.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Because you may say, we're never gonna do anything with it, right?
Yeah,
And then
but who knows,
the
a council
next
20 years from now,
next
yeah,
council down the road, right?
Yeah.
So this is maybe the only tool we have to, you know, secure it as open space.
yes,
With.
I agree.
You know, anyone will tell you who's in this business, like, you can set the easement up to do whatever end goal you want. If you want a couple of lots out of it, if you want to be able to develop a trailhead parking lot and trail system, you can just write all that into the easement.
Yeah.
Then you've protected everything else.
I think there's a reason to consider sending that conservation easement, Bear River Land Conservancy's ways, or someone like that. And the reason being is Alpine, did you see the Alpine vote that went up? It was a conservation easement, some land that everybody wanted in conservation easement. It wasn't held by a land conservancy, it was held, you know, Cache County can hold.
Yeah,
land.
we can hold our own easement, yeah.
And Alpine wanted to put a road across it. And so they were gonna undo that part of the easement for that purpose. And because it wasn't held outside with the vision of the original founders doing it, the original founders had the vision this land would be, you know, held in conservation. Because it wasn't them down the road, this land was gonna be undone. So
Yeah,
there is a reason
absolutely.
to send your vision to where it can be protected rather than holding it within.
Yeah, I agree, and that's my intent on both of these purchases, is to get them under easement. And I also agree that it's safest to have someone else hold it, because if it's only the county holding it, which we could hold it also, but if it's only us, then yeah, some county leaders in the future might say, you know what, we've got too much open space, it's too expensive, let's get rid of some of it.
And that destroys the legacy and
Yeah.
what everybody today paid for.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know, I would sue them. I'd be a citizen suing them and saying, no, the voters voted, that money came from here.
And
But,
that's what happened in
yeah.
Alpine, and, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, but I don't want to have to be in that position. I'd rather just have an easement that protects it. But yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's what we need to make sure happens on both.
On Brent's behalf, on the Sardine, are you familiar with Weber County's property in North Fork?
No.
That's one vision he had, is something like North Fork Park. Are you familiar with that, Landon?
A little bit, yeah.
Landis, sorry. It's worth going down and seeing. They've got a winter in.
Impressive.
They've got a winter and some. You've been there.
Yeah.
They've got a winter and summer facility that's owned by the county there, and it's the equivalent of Cache Trails Alliance that's kind of developed the trails, and it's just amazing. And there's always, they've added and added to it, and it's worth the drive over. It's not very far from our county when you really look at
Yeah,
I go over Eden,
yeah.
or over the pass there.
What's it called again?
North Fork Park.
North Fork Park in Weber County?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sky Park and has some archery facilities.
Okay.
Does it have archery facility?
I think so.
Sounds like we need to go on a field trip, Landis.
I didn't know about that. I know about the bike. There's biking and there's a whole winter trail facility there.
Nice.
You reference it as a potential outcome for the shore.
Yeah. I also I don't know what our relationship is with the Forest Service and how that's zoned there, but understanding that would be helpful.
Wilderness.
It's wilderness.
A lot of it's
Okay.
wilderness. They have talked about adjusting Rattlesnake Trail a little bit, so this gives us some leverage working with them, but it is, most of it's wilderness. So
Right there on this border on this side.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's a nightmare there, right?
Yeah, that's Forest Service.
Good.
Okay.
Other questions, comments?
If any of you have any other questions, call me or text me anytime.
Sure. Probably the last one is, I think we have at least one open spot on the committee. Has any progress been made on filling out our committee with?
I can't remember.
full set of members?
Thanks for reminding me, though. Which seat was it? Remind me which seat. It was,
I think it's a general,
it's just a general one?
could be wrong,
Right.
I have to double check, but I think all the like technical
Okay.
experts have been filled. So.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. I need to follow up on that.
Sure, thanks.
Just one more comment. I do believe that Summit Land Conservancy holds quite a few easements for Summit County.
That's how they're managing it.
Yeah. So the county has purchased land, and I believe that they've then placed an easement in Summit County being an independent party, Summit Land Conservancy being an independent party holds those conservation easements.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. I spoke with them this afternoon.
Good.
Did they do it for that purpose, is to separate it from the county? So it can,
I would guess so. I didn't ask specifically, but that's generally the case. I mean, you know, a dedicated 501c3 that has that, you know, goal in mind.
Yeah, there are counties that hold easements, but I think it's less common for a county to hold an easement on property they already own. And you get into some different kind of legal issues there that you can talk to your attorney about with doctrine of merger, right? Holding an easement on property that you also own a fee title. There's some things that kind of dance around there, right? And then how much protection that actually provides that later talked about.
Okay. Anything else? What about comments or other business? Anything forthcoming you're aware of, Brandon?
I don't have anything. I have sent out a couple of emails to people that have sort of just been referred to saying that so-and-so may be interested, but I haven't gotten any applications back from those. But I've got a couple of phone calls about, you know, this property. Like someone said, oh, you know, I may be interested or something like that. So.
Brandon and David, and members of this committee, there was a letter that a private citizen group, I only know one of them, I don't know the whole group, but they sent out some letters to people that are in the South Gateway. So if you get an inquiry, a group did send that out, trying to increase awareness.
A private group, then?
What's that?
A private group?
A private group,
Okay.
yeah.
Did they list in their letter who should be contacted? If they're interested?
One of them sent me, I didn't read through the letter, but they did.
I'm just wondering if they said, call David Zook, here's his cell number, or call Brandon, or.
Probably. I gave them your cell number when they asked for it. No, I'm just kidding.
That's fine. All numbers are open space, whatever it takes.
Yeah, I'm not, I do not know that, but,
Some of the questions I had have to do with just staffing and capacity. As you know, with staff, has the county been able to fill the planner positions at this point?
We have not, you're talking about the Development Services Director position? No, that position is still open. Angie is serving as our interim director, and appreciate her service there. She's doing a great job. But we're down a position still.
Okay.
And I just wanted to point out too, I was reading in anticipation of today's meeting, I reread the ordinance that created this group. And in section 2.76.050, powers and duties, in the second subsection under that, it says COSAC duties. It says, upon the request of the county council and at least annually, COSAC shall make presentation to the county council. So you guys have that meeting coming up, but it says that at least annually you're supposed to present to them regarding the evaluation standards that you're using to evaluate land. And it says, at such presentations, COSAC will report on goals, progress, and actions with the goal of refining and improving evaluation standards and practices. So that might be a good time in 2 weeks to just let them know, here's what our criteria is that we're using, and make sure they're still on board with that criteria.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. And just, you know, tracking the applications that are coming in and that sort of thing. I feel like, I don't know if there's an opportunity to bring on an intern that can just work on COSAC stuff or something, you know, part-time sort of deal, but I could see a lot of items that we've talked about or requested or that sort of thing can hopefully we can make progress on if we had somebody that was dedicated. We had, I just use an example, when we were first formed, I can't remember her name, but we had
Annika.
what was it? Annika, thank you. Yeah, she was dedicated to the committee, and so we were able to make a lot of progress during that time, so. We'd love an opportunity to. Okay.
Yeah, Angie and I will have a discussion about staffing.
Yeah, we just understand that there's a lot of, there's positions to be filled and that sort of thing, and so we're trying not to overwhelm staff with what we need. I received an email last week from the local Audubon chapter. Can we see some maps of the conservation easement properties, and can you give us a summary of, you know, projects and stuff like that, just kind of day-to-day information that we don't have at our fingertips, that it would be nice to get that sort of stuff under control if we can. So that, I mean, I think it'll be very helpful to come to the council with, here we've tracked all the projects, here's their status and everything, and how many acres and that sort of thing. And Brandon's been working with us with the time that he has, but it's limited, so.
Thanks for letting me.
Yeah, sure.
That went to, they're referring people to cachecounty.gov/executive/COSAC.html. And.
Just to our website.
Yeah. And I don't know what's on that page. I guess it's just the committee type stuff. It does have, I don't see a phone number here. It goes to develop, it says, please contact development services. So anyway, these would be, knowing that it's South Gateway, these would be, and I know that they included Sardine Canyon in that. What I'd hate for them to do is get lost in a shuffle, like not, like invited in the door.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Brandon, if you see those, if you can really pull them in and.
What, the applications or?
Well, have them come to this meeting so that we can, what I'd hate is if you have one of those prime properties that prevent you from, that if it gets developed, you won't see the valley.
Yeah.
And they contacted us and they just felt like there was too much bureaucracy right from the start.
Anyone that's contacted me, I've replied by phone or email, so they've all been responded to that's gotten in contact.
Have you heard from any of them? Curious.
I don't know if they came from that. They weren't, there was one that wasn't in that area. There were a couple that weren't in that area, but I don't know if they somehow, word of mouth spread from that effort or not.
Okay, anything else, committee? All right, without objection, we'll stand adjourned then, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Allison Ward set out, and a group of, I don't know how many she had, sent out to the title group there along the highway, both sides.
100 or so.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm glad
big
somebody
one
did
is
that.
just, are they gonna actually do anything with it?
Hopefully it didn't cost them $10,000, whatever.
Oh, no, it was gonna be, no, and they said, there's donors,
Even owns it, it's not guaranteed it's protected, so
donate,
appreciated that that was brought up.
donate all
You can get
this.
something done.
And she,
I would have put in 50.
Yeah.
that was the list of
Something like Shore Hill,